We're here on Passmore Street to look at the beautiful Fox and Hounds pub, which was built in 1860 or the 1860s to facilitate workers of the Grosvenor Estate. The Grosvenor Estate housing important and wealthy people. So carriage workers, butlers and so on would have been drinking in this pub. And it's got a few very important historical features to it, which I think we're going to have to tell inside and use as an excuse to have a drink. But before we move on, I will say that this street was called Union Street. So there is a huge chance that in the historical records, you might come across a Fox and Hounds on Union Street. They will be referring to the Fox and Hounds on Passmore Street. So this is very relevant to understand in case you do come across some sort of historical record of its description. Now, what you will find, or what you'll notice, is that it is a beautiful house. Now, we're not going to go into detail here, we're going to talk about this elsewhere, but that's thanks to the Beer Act of 1830, which allowed houses to basically form into public houses or beer houses. But we'll talk about that at a later time. Now, if we was to leave the pub and walk down Graham Terrace, we would get to Holbein Place, which is just the street at the end of the road there. Now, Holbein Place attaches to Chelsea Bridge Road, but importantly, it is bordering with the Royal Borough of Chelsea. But you would have got a vast array of valets, butlers, chauffeurs, all sorts of people in here who were working for the highest echelons of the time. They probably would have had either some tall tales to tell or some very interesting truths. Because can you imagine what it was like working for the most powerful people in Britain, or dare I say, some of the most powerful people in the world? I can imagine either a few fibs were told in there, or maybe a few truths of the type which we can't imagine. So, what makes the Fox and Hound so special? There's lots of reasons, but I'm going to tell you one in particular. And it might be especially special to you if you're a lady who loves her soap operas. I say lady, I'm sure there's plenty of you men out there that hide your secret love for soap operas, but don't admit it in front of me. Now, the chap at the bar has very kindly let me wield this picture, which usually hangs just by the bar. And I'm going to use it to tell you how important this pub is. So nearby, and this was in 1956, nearby lived Tony Warren, actor and would-be script writer. His neighbours were mainly servants of the Grosvenor Estate, living in humble houses on a sooty terrace street. The pub on the corner was the Fox and Hounds, and still is, and unlike the rest of the street, it looks as though it changed little in the 60 years or so since Warren's planned series, Our Street, was rejected by the BBC. Now, Our Street would later go on to become what we know as Coronation Street. And the BBC actually rejected this, right? And it was Granada up north who would then take him on. But what he did was he depicted his idea, his story from this street, this pub, and the people living around it. That's where he took his inspiration. And it's incredibly important to point out why he took this inspiration as a way of painting a British society. Pubs like this, like the street, are iconic postcard images of what it is to be in England or in Britain, right? So if I was to be overly honest about it, I would say if you look at something like even EastEnders, if you look at Coronation Street, they centre around the pub. The terraced houses all seem to verge off of the pub, which exists as the main focal point of the series. And this helps us highlight how vital public houses are in the mind of the average Briton, of the average person looking into Britain, to paint that picture of Englishness, Britishness, whether you're in Scotland, our pubs, our terraced houses, they become one and the same, and you can't really have one without the other because it looks barren without them. So this pub was where Tony used to drink and where he gained the inspiration by watching people of the working class and people of the upper class, and therefore created the story of Coronation Street, which so many people still watch today. Obviously, soap operas have become somewhat more liberal than they began, but when they did first start out, there was almost a sense of wholesomeness about them. You remember Heartbeat and things like that. There was that sense of cultural community, which I feel they've long since lost. Look at this beautiful painting here. Some of the beautiful paintings in the pub really bring it to life. Up here, look at this. An old fox hunt outside a pub called the Fighting Cocks. Now I'm going to put this picture back, seeing as we were so kindly allowed to use it. And I'll mention that another feature of this pub, which makes it the most unique of its kind in all of London, is the fact that it was the very last to get its spirits licence, which took place in 1996. Now, once again, thank you to the staff for letting us use this, for letting us film, and just being so kind in general. But most importantly, thank you for looking after such a beautiful pub. So, see how my hand-eye coordination's doing? There we go. So, thank you very much to the Fox and Hounds. From Dan and I, we'll see you soon. Take care.